Okay, so this was a video that Addison was suggesting, and when he said it, I was like, I definitely want to do this video. This is pretty funny. So, as you can probably tell from the title or the thumbnail, it's what I miss about Accenture. So for those who don't know, I'm currently a solutions consultant or solutions architect at Google. I started in March of 2022 and I've been at Accenture for about 3-4 years before that. It was my first job out of college. And what I wanted to say was because technically my roles are similar where I'm working with clients, I'm working with technology, and in this case, like I'm working with proprietary software. Workday is technically Workday software at Accenture. And then when it came to Google, of course, I'm working at Google, so it's Google software. But there's still a few things that I actually missed about Accenture. Despite all the cool things that people usually hear about Google, I wanted to be very truthful here about what I actually missed about Accenture. Of course, there's friends I made at Accenture I do miss, but there's also a few things I did miss about Accenture while working at Google, despite all the nice things that Google has. And also, Accenture is a great company too. I think it's a great place to start your career. I definitely learned a lot, and I don't have any ill feelings about the company or my experience there or the people around there. So I wanted to kind of talk about this. First off, I feel like the very simple one is my friends. Like, I made friends. It's been literally 3 to 4 years since I was there, so I made a lot of friends, either based in New York or on the projects that I've been on. Unfortunately, with the way that the projects are, I only really made friends with people that I saw in person or worked with a lot virtually. It's not as easy to connect with someone on a project until you really meet them in person, or you work every freaking day, or you come to bond over a particular situation. But I also did notice that, for some friends, after I left Accenture and I came to Google, we actually don't talk that much anymore. We talk during the projects, of course, but after the project is over and I rolled off, of course, the last month or so, when people knew I was leaving Accenture to go to Google, they talked to me a lot to just, catch up and to be like, hey, congratulations, or, give me a referral. So it's, things like that where I talk to them the most. But we kind of, got off that path because honestly, I feel like because of how virtual everything was, it's hard to just be like, hey, see you again, good to talk to you soon, or hopefully we see each other again, because we're not in New York together. I'm in New York, they're in Chicago, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, all that kind of places. And it's actually one of Addison, who is my boyfriend working at Accenture right now, also has that issue where his closest friends are not even in New York. It's actually some people he's met on projects who are not in New York. It's either in Seattle or Chicago. So it's just basically how it's like to be in a fully remote environment where you bond over complaining, and also, of course, you bond over talking to each other and being with each other 24/7, basically, from working. But I miss my friends, and there are some people in New York office that I'm still friends with, and we still hang out. It's just not as frequent, because before I would go to the office and then I would see them and we can go hang out in the city because we're here together. But it's just not as frequent anymore. We don't talk to each other as much. I talk more to my coworkers at Google now, so we hang out more because we go to the office together. Of course, I still bring some people from Accenture over to the office to just visit as friends, so that's pretty cool. All right. Then the other one is I do have someone who joined on my team a little bit later after me, maybe 1 or 2 months after me, and she also came from Accenture. We both agreed on this point. We noticed that this was something we both noticed at Accenture that we noticed was not as prevalent in our team, or at least in the Google system that we saw, at least this year. Who knows, maybe it's different. But it was how organized and streamlined things can be. And when we went to reorientation, it was actually something that people made fun of. It was you can have 8 teams doing the same thing at Google. You don't get that at Accenture because they're trying to be as lean as possible. They try to be organized. They try to make sure people are authorized to do what they're supposed to do. So people just don't have that much freedom to do everything they wanted to do. So while Google, you can have 8 teams doing the same thing different ways and being very inefficient with their resources and their time and their energy. At Accenture, it goes through a path where we're okay, we're gonna bring this person in, we're gonna bring this person in. I'm not talking about this particularly, I'm just talking about Accenture's just more organized and more streamlined. They just have a team for everything. They want to reduce redundancy as much as they can, so it's as efficient as possible. Google is not efficient. Or at least my experience at Google has not been efficient. It's just, Like, it's a good and a bad thing, because it's a good thing that if you wanted to do something, you could just run with it. But at Accenture, you kind of have to go through processes. And in some ways, I kind of wish for that back, because then I can make sure that I'm not doing something redundant, or that everyone's talking to each other, as opposed to before, where like at Google, maybe more than one team is working on the same thing. Maybe we're not communicating with each other. It just requires a lot more time, because it's like, whatever you want to do, you could technically make it happen as long as you have an approval, but it's not all approvals from the same person. So you could be doing something redundant. And that's like what they talked about in the reorientation, is that like a lot of Googlers like to re-engineer or reinvent the wheel when you don't have to, or that you just have to do something brand new, or do something to be able to say like, hey, look, I made this achievement in our performance achievement or performance evaluation time. While at Accenture, there's a more streamlined process. So I guess like in this case, it's bureaucracy. I find this a little bit better sometimes, because you would be a little bit more smart, a little bit more efficient with your time and your energy, and everyone else would too. So there's a process for everything. So I guess it depends on how you see it, but in this particular way, sometimes we just prefer there was a streamlined way of like, okay, this is the process you do things, that's how it's supposed to be. And vice versa, everyone else would also not have that same issue. Everyone would follow the same way. It's more cohesive, everyone knows to do that. But at Google, there's like so many different ways to do so many different things, that that's just like the organization. It's like, it's run by chaos. It's run by engineers, essentially. But Accenture is very project management, so everything is tracked and organized and very streamlined and efficient. And then we have being able to work with external systems. I didn't think this would be something I would like or dislike. More like dislike. But Accenture uses a lot of external systems. We, of course, like try to implement our own things though. Like, for example, Accenture is doing Workday. So the team itself at Accenture, my boyfriend included, is implementing Workday for Accenture. But we're not creating our own system. We're not engineering our own system. And I think that's a good thing, because we're leaving it to the pros to do what they have to do, and then we do what we're doing well in. But at Google, everyone is like, let's make our own system. Let's make this work for us. And it was ironic, because I'm not going to give you the situation particularly, there's too much details, but I was just talking to my friends about this the other day, is that in one of our internal systems, there's like custom label 2357. It's not labeled. It's definitely half-assed, because someone made this, forgot to actually rename it or provide some kind of business use case to it. They just made it. So there's no QC, no quality control in internal systems. There are definitely teams that work on internal systems, but at a certain point, everyone's like, let's make our own system. Let's make our own system. They're not necessarily the best in that, because we're not necessarily doing it in that area. We're just doing it just so we can keep it internal. So I prefer to have an external system that works really well, that syncs well with our internal systems, if anything. And when I say internal systems, I'm talking about like internal facing systems that are made internal. Google tries to make all the systems. Accenture, we have time to implement it, but we are not making our new system, because they can do this. Whoever's making the software can do it best. So why are we wasting our time? They're more efficient. That goes to the previous bullet point right there. But this was where I was like, there's so many things I'm working with some Google internal systems. I'm like, that's great. We can customize certain features that we want to do what we want, but at the same time, it's just not good. Like, we've talked about these solutions that we provide to our clients sometimes, and maybe we just have like a whole database of all these solutions, but there's no quality control about what's good or not. So when we have our own system trying to do what we are talking about, maybe there's like that custom label 2357, and I was like, what is this custom label for? Like, who was working on this? Like, why is this here? Like, what's the purpose of this? What is this in the first place? Like, we don't know what to do. If we worked with an outsourced system, or if we have like internal ticketing system or something like that, maybe we can actually have it set, because the experts did the research. We're not going to research how did so-and-so do this, or what's the user journey for this, or like what's the business purpose of this button, and then just randomly make a button. Like, yes, we can make it, but does it make business sense? No, because Google is very engineer focused and Accenture is very project management focused. So we know when to outsource and not. I'm not trying to shit on Google, but there's just definitely pros and cons to customizing a solution and we have great ideas. It's just a lot of times execution kind of sucks. And the same thing happens to implementations. Like my boyfriend's right now doing the Workday implementation for Accenture. It comes with its pros and cons, okay? It's not all of them are going to be great, despite how I'm saying it right now. It's just, there's just some things I miss about Accenture, that we were doing it very efficiently at Accenture, and we had external systems that were great in what we were doing. But when it came to internal, like, yes, like maybe whatever those external systems we did at Accenture could have had like maybe 1 or 2 tweaks. But these internal systems, at the very least, make sure that the quality control is good, or that we have someone to work with to make sure it works well. And then this was probably something that is definitely what I mentioned earlier, which was that at Accenture, it was definitely more hybrid. If you want to check out my video over here on being hybrid, on like what I thought about being hybrid, this is pretty similar to that Accenture was pretty much 100% remote, except for when you're going on site to a client. And I like that because there's a lot more flexibility. But for Google particularly, I had to go in person, like hybrid, 2 to 3, maybe 4 times a week. And it's great because you get free food and you get to see people. But I like that flexibility of like, I want to go in when I want to, as opposed to, oh, I have to go in like just because I need to show my face. It's 2-3 times a week. Working 100% remotely, I don't have to fight for rooms. I don't have all those negative or those cons in that video. Essentially, I won't have that issue here. I can do all the work I want to do. And I guess like one pro about working hybrid is that when I'm in the office, I'm not conflicted with my boyfriend. We're like right across from each other in this room, so our voices can conflict. And we do even have this stupid button to make sure that we're in a meeting. We click that on so we know not to disturb the other person or like come into the video, because I'm on video calls all the time. So we don't have that issue. Working remotely is nice, and I like to be able to do that without having to worry about it. But I mean, there's pros and cons to going to the Google office too, because you get the food, you get to collaborate, you get to make friends. But I just like that flexibility of like, what if I want to go 100% remote this month? I could technically, but it's going to be looked down upon. So, and then the last one is actually probably the most important part to being a cat sitter, is syncing our calendars together, which honestly works really well from back then when we were working 100% remote, because we had our calendars synced up, so we knew like, oh, this person's on a call at this time. So I can move to that room, or I could be quiet, or I'll make sure not to have my call at that time when I'm scheduling something. And that was done. Now, because we're working in 2 separate companies, this is just like an our issue. This is not a Google or an Accenture issue. This is an issue between the 2 of us, is that like now I have to actually go see his calendar. We have to coordinate with his calendar. If we're gonna do like a meet and greet at like 4 p.m., I have to coordinate with his calendar. Before I could just see it and I would just do it and it would just make it work. But no, we can't. Before, we had our Outlook calendars when we were both working at Accenture together, synced together so we knew what was happening. But that's not the case here. Again, this is just like a stupid little nitpicky thing, not a Google thing, not an Accenture thing. It's just because we work at the same company. If he was at Google, I could probably do the same thing again, but he's not, so. So that's probably what I would say is things I miss about Accenture. I think honestly, the streamline part, the being efficient, having actual things to do, because there's a lot of cyclical parts of Google, specifically my role because it's in shopping, so it's very focused on retail, so it's around holiday season. But there's also other things that I can do at Accenture. So I know like I should count my blessings, because having downtime around this time of year is great. I can do whatever I want. But at the same time, I'm the type of person that likes to stay busy. So Accenture at least is like a lot more organized, a lot streamlined. I know what to do if I have a particular process. Google, there's like, it's not efficient. It's like chaos. We thrive on chaos. Accenture thrives on having order. There's a difference there. So take it how you will, but thank you guys so much and see you guys next time.